Hello, good afternoon, good morning to our friends on the West Coast, and good evening to those who are in London or elsewhere in the world. Welcome back to Plugged In. I'm your host, Sherrell Dorsey, and today we're digging into one of the most critical and also one of the most overlooked challenges in climate innovation, which is getting breakthrough technologies out of universities, out of national labs and into the real world so we get these solutions on the ground where they are needed most. And today we are joined by Troy Daley, program director at LabStart, a first of its kind program that's helping first time founders commercialize deep tech solutions coming out of government labs. And now LabStart is working at the exact point where most climate hardware companies fail. We know that this is a major challenge, but it's matching entrepreneurial talent with scientific breakthroughs that were never designed with a traditional business model in mind. And Troy has such an amazing background, and we're going to learn so much more about his journey to in this space. We're also going to unpack why climate tech in particular faces steep commercialization hurdles compared to other sectors, and why and what early stage investors, especially those who are here joining us today, should start looking for when evaluating some of these kind of lab-born startups, and how do we start to strengthen that tech transfer pipeline to unlock this next decade of climate solutions. And so I'm really excited to have everyone here as you all are piling in. Please, please, please drop your name, your LinkedIn, and who you're representing, what you're representing, and we'll have some time towards the end of our conversation with Troy for a bit of a Q&A. So just get those questions ready. Again, we always record these episodes. So if you have to jump early, you can always come back to the conversation. And lastly, my PSA, if you have not already, folks, what are you waiting for? Sign up for Impact Alpha's free weekly newsletter, Impact Open. It's crisp, it's expert curated investment briefing. It lifts up people, data, tools, trends, as well as job opportunities that help you stay ahead of the curve. Make sure that you find it at impactalpha.com/open. And I believe our trusty, amazing producer is going to drop it here in the chat for you. So without further ado, Troy, let's get into it. Welcome. We are so happy to have you here.
Yeah, excited as well.
Amazing, amazing. So, Troy, I actually want to start with your journey because it's been so fascinating. You've been in the industry in a very interesting way and then decided to help commercialize these incredible innovations. So let's kind of start about, with your background and your journey into this work.
Yeah, definitely. So my background's in chemical engineering. Worked at a few different process engineering roles before, but I think one of the biggest things was that I really wanted to have like an impact from early on in what I was doing and not necessarily being like a small piece of a very large company. And I was very pushed towards working in climate as well as entrepreneurship. So one of my first jobs right out of college was at a small consulting firm where we were looking at working with the federal government as well as national labs on helping them think through how are they getting all of the technologies, all the millions of dollars they're investing in these different technologies out into the world. And in short, they weren't doing that great of a job. And we really saw this gap in there's really this opportunity of bringing in entrepreneurs who have a lot of this passion and drive for bringing these solutions to market. And how do we pair them with these amazing technologies that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars being devoted to their creation and actually launch companies around them? So that led to us launching LabStart as a nonprofit a few years ago, where we're focused on that intersection of how do we take all this amazing technology that has a lot of potential behind it for climate change and all of these amazing entrepreneurs out there and help launch companies from them.
Absolutely. I that's such an amazing journey, and I always love to start there because there's always the problem of, again, like getting from these great, meaty, awesome ideas and technologies and then getting them out into the world. And we know that capital drives that, the ability to really launch, to test, and then to grow and to scale these technologies. Can you talk about or speak to a bit more around what makes climate technologies particularly challenging to spin out compared to other sectors?
Yeah, definitely. So I definitely think we're living in a very different paradigm for climate companies than we were just a couple of years ago, even. I think with a lot of the pushes coming from the federal government as well as on the corporate side as well, a lot of these companies that are launching today can't just really focus on environmental impacts. They also have to think about how am I how am I having carbon savings or water savings or affecting human health impacts, but also making a business that's able to stand on its own financially. That's not just reliant on carbon credits or tax credits or green premiums in order to be a profitable company. They have to be able to create real savings for customers and actually be profitable companies on their own. So I think that's for climate companies generally. But I think there's on this other side of how do you spin out climate technologies from universities or national labs, and I think it's really a black box for most folks. If you're not coming from within these industries, most people don't really know how to license a technology to build a company with it, or that's even a pathway that people can be taking. So we're really helping founders through our program really help them identify these critical technologies that are out there on the shelves of universities and national labs, and actually how do you build a business around that. And we're really working with folks at this very first stage of they have either have the initial idea for wanting to launch a company, or in their very first days of launching a company, how do we help them get access to a lot of those technologies and vet those technologies so that they can launch these companies around them.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually am listening right now to there's a New York Times piece on the Daily called, the energy transition is here. It just isn't in the US, which I haven't finished it, so I have to finish a core of the thesis. And as much as I see the proliferation of green technologies on a global scale, I really love the programs and the energy behind places like LabStart, especially because of the opportunity for friction reduction, right? So like the
Mhm.
ability to help and support, these talents, like to bring these things to the table, but also sort of be that, technology transfer partner, maybe sales transfer partner, like helping to make the right introductions and kind of get these things to market faster. And so I'm curious, Troy, how do you all pair some of the entrepreneurial talent with these scientific breakthroughs that were not necessarily designed with the business model in mind, but how do you kind of bridge that gap, to ensure that the right folks are being paired with the right technologies to build the right business model around it?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll throw a couple of stats your way to kind of like set the scene for this here. So the International Energy Agency says that there's 40% of the technologies that the planet needs to meet our 2050 climate goals. They're still yet to be commercialized. A lot of them are either being developed or they've already been developed at universities and national labs, but they haven't really reached the market yet, and no one's doing anything with them
Yeah.
to actually bring them to market. And then there's over 30,000 patents in our just in the United States universities and national lab systems that are just sitting on the shelves of these universities, not really anything being done with them, with millions and hundreds of millions of dollars being invested into all of these technologies. So what LabStart does is we're looking at the problem first. I think there's a few other entrepreneur support organizations out there that take the technology and then try to find a founder to commercialize that technology. But we see that a little bit as a square peg into a round hole. So at LabStart, we're really focused on we help entrepreneurs identify a problem first. Go talk to people in the market, either that they're doing customer discovery with, to really identify what are real pain points that people are facing in the market that they're willing to pay for a solution today, willing to pay for a solution tomorrow. And then once we've really had our founders really hone in on identifying that problem, then let's go to that library of 30,000 patents and start searching through. Are there things in there that they can be pulling out from the lab that can be solving these real challenges and pain points that folks are seeing in the market, and helping them through that, really thinking through, all right, how do you establish a baseline for a business around this?
Yeah.
Business best practices. How do you think about like getting the license for those technologies, thinking about initial scaling and a fundraising pathway to start building out all these technologies into at
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah. I'm curious too, Troy, like through the years, and through the various, like we'll just say like cohorts,
Mhm.
um, I'm curious what the feedback has been for the investors that you all work with, or are you seeing also more interest in investors, across the board, potentially impact investors or those who are, I don't know, in manufacturing or what have you. Yeah, I'm just curious, like if you're noticing an increase in interest or attention or any kind of specific feedback that might be coming, as they engage with LabStart companies.
Yeah, definitely. I think early stage climate investing is definitely also at a very different place than it was a few years ago. I think now what we're really seeing is a lot of these investors looking for a much stronger signals on what are the early market traction that folks have, whether, and that's why we're having these, our entrepreneurs go out, talk to these folks. Can they get a signed LOI saying that, oh, people want this solution in their hands today, or their business is going to go under in the next 5 years. They need these solutions to become more profitable. So figuring out how do you, especially at this early stage, how do you get that those market indicators so that you can be raising capital to be building these things out. And another thing too is looking at a techno-economic analysis, or taking a look at how do you do the translation of taking the baseline technology and turning it into a product, and is it profitable along the way? Are you seeing, but not just profitable, but also seeing impact savings, whether that's through carbon, through water, through other hazardous chemicals that are the status quo with a lot of these heavy industry companies today. And especially at this early stage, a lot of the TEA work that people are doing, it's guesswork. It's a lot of these things are first of a kind that are going to be deployed. While you can be pulling some similarities from other industries, there's going to be some guesswork at this early stage. So you got to be a lot of these founders need to be showing that they're going to have 4 to 5x savings at this initial scale on paper, so that when they do the scale up and some of their estimates might not be on the mark, they're still even if it's not 4 to 5x better, it's still 2 to 3x better, which can lead to a lot of savings for the customers, can lead to better margins for the companies that they're creating. But I think on the investor side, one things that we've been seeing too is that a lot of the climate investors are looking for asset light solutions, whether that's like software or sensors. And those definitely have their place in solving the climate crisis. But if we really want to see the large impacts that we need to see to be solving the climate crisis, we need to be looking at funding deep climate tech companies, whether that's innovations in green chemicals or agriculture or in manufacturing. We need to see investments at these companies. So whether that's investors or other large capital holders like philanthropy, we need them to be coming in to make these early bets, to be filling in some of that void that the federal government left behind in when they used to be funding a lot of this early stage. When you find some other players to be funding a lot of this early stage research to help these entrepreneurs get to that scale to actually be deploying out in the field.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm so glad too that you made mention of that as well. Last week we had a conversation with some investors and discussing this idea of like blended or in braided capital. That like listen, VC is only going to go so far, so there has to be a series of others at the table who can help, move this along. I'm not sure if you've read I want to say it's Derek Thompson and Ezra Klein's book on abundance, and they speak so much to this conversation on, the US kind of in the beginning being a front runner on the kind of green energy transition, and then kind of the slowdown with lack of investment in R&D. And so what I love about what you shared here is that there still is this appetite for us to continue to look at, number one, the opportunity for funding these innovations, picking through these patents and saying, hey, like this was actually a really great idea, like let's go for it. But also we need the infrastructure and the capital in order to meet the demand and meet the need. And in one of the discussions we had last year, like this is I mean excuse me last week, the I think there's this kind of holistic conversation that we have to always include, which is this isn't just about creating the technology itself. It's about the economic engine that can be spurred, right, as a result of, making these deeper investments. And so yes, software can scale quicker and faster, but the long-term implications of being able to invest in harder tech, deeper tech, long-term thinking is where you're going to get a stronger return, in the long run is the goal. And to that point, one of the things that I've seen from LabStart is that you all are sitting kind of at this intersection as well of workforce development as well as climate innovation. So I'm curious, Troy, how are you all thinking about cultivating also the next generation maybe of climate founders and operators and workers, so to speak, and not just the science itself, because you're kind of solving like a multi-pronged, no, a multi-pronged solution.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the luxuries I have as like the program director here at LabStar's, I work directly with all of our entrepreneurs in the program. I get to talk to them every day and really work with them. And it's really inspiring to see all of them, everything that they're working on, and how passionate and driven they are about the solutions that they're developing. They're really brilliant people who could be, they could easily get a job at a tech company or being a researcher, or talented engineers that could just be working, making a really good paycheck working at an oil and gas company. But they really want to see the impact of their work. And especially, LabStart really focuses on how do we bring together a diverse cohort of folks. And that means coming from all different backgrounds. And a lot of them come from places that are seeing the impacts of climate change. So they're thinking through, how can I bring these solutions to their communities to be creating jobs, to be creating new opportunities that folks otherwise wouldn't have. In order to do that, one of the things that we're looking at is really, in order to be a climate founder, um, it's hard to really grow and scale a company if you're just doing something on nights and weekends. And most of the entrepreneurs we're working with aren't individually wealthy where they can support themselves to be unemployed for a while. Many of them have kids, families, student loans that they can't go unpaid. So one of LabStart's core thesis is that we need to pay these entrepreneurs at this earliest stage so that they can focus on building and launching these companies. So through our year-long program, LabStart provides 100K investment into these companies, basically so that they can pay themselves a salary for this year, and they can really focus on the company. So they're not having to worry about, how am I going to pay for groceries next week? How am I going to pay for
Yeah.
child support? While they can focus on doing everything that needs to be done to be building these companies at their earliest stages, so then that they're ready at the end of our program to be going on to raise money from investors or being in downstream programs like Breakthrough Energy or Activate, so that they can take all the amazing things that they're working on, and how do they bring it to the different communities that they're a part of, create jobs, create that economic engine that you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that so much because it is a risk, right? It is a risk to jump into something that may or may not work out, right? And to forfeit kind of guarantees, which, I mean, guarantees, I guess, are probably not so much guaranteed in the climates that we've been in, but I think that makes this program and at least the kind of conversation around how does entrepreneurship sustain itself? How do we get more people wanting to jump into these spaces and to use their skill sets to bring these kinds of technologies, into the world, so significant. I want to go ahead and cut to Q&A
Mhm.
before I ask my final question here. So Michael Martin asks, now speaking of value and ROI, do you use the dramatic rise of solar as an example of how other clean tech can scale and deliver high value for investors?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely can look at solar as one of these first big wins for climate. I think there's back in the day, you can see like there's all the charts that show like where the price of solar was, and then all these folks working and building new companies to really show really show and build this technology forward to now that it's one of the cheapest sources of electricity that you can be doing. And a lot of the work to be developing these technologies were at universities and national labs. It just took the people working together to build these next generation of companies to really drive down that price. And
Yeah.
that's something that we're going to be seeing with a lot of the technologies that are coming out today. There's so many so many amazing technologies being developed at the labs that just need more. that need the charismatic founder behind it, that need that initial funding support to really be the champion of these technologies and drive them through. To a lot of the large commercial players might not know these technologies or might not be
Yeah.
agile enough or nimble enough to incorporate them. They need those entrepreneurs to be doing that initial development around all of this, so then they can be taking it and have that business case to large corporate players to adopt and really see how do we drive down these energy prices, increase energy
Hmm.
efficiency, make all of these processes more green.
Yeah.
That and a lot of them can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to, just kind of speak to your original statement around, different kinds of capital players to come in and to fund deeper tech, right? And so for those in the room who are listening in, particularly at the earliest stage investor level, Troy, can you share with us like what signals they should be looking for when evaluating these lab-born climate technologies that are just beginning their commercialization journey?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, well, yeah. So some of the things I mentioned earlier, I think especially looking at techno-economic analysis, I think that's one of the biggest things. I think taking a look at exactly what are the steps in the process that are going to be that are in these new inventions and processes that companies are developing, and taking a look at, all right, what are the things that are going to be off the shelf that are already industry standard that people can do? And then what are the new novel things in their process or in their business model that these entrepreneurs are looking at? And that's where a lot of the innovation is coming in, and these specific, either like a new catalyst for green chemicals or new business models, and how these large corporates can be developing things that they're looking at. And that's something we're really working with our companies at this earliest stage, and I think that's what a lot of these early stage deep tech investors are really looking at, to try to tell, like, all right, is this science real, or is it great at a bench scale or on paper, but it's going to fall apart once it scales up? And really working through that, how do we do a lot of that initial validation, a lot of that initial trialing, to figure out, is this worth the investment? So because there are people that really need these solutions on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I loved learning about you is that you are deeply connected with the Clean Energy Leadership Institute. And so I guess from your vantage point, what gives you the most confidence about the talent pipeline that's entering the climate sector right now?
Yeah, definitely. So the Clean Energy Leadership Institute, or CLI, is, I think, an amazing organization and amazing group of people. Definitely would recommend anyone on working in climate or clean energy to definitely apply and be part of that fellowship program. But it's just a group of some of the most smartest, most driven people who are really passionate about clean energy and solving the climate crisis. This org's been around since the early 2010s, so a lot of the people who have been a part of the org have really been on this roller coaster of climate, have seen the ups and seen the downs, but they're really passionate and driven about bringing all these changes into market and solving the climate crisis. That it's just really amazing to see that no matter what hardships the industry is going through, people are really passionate about this, and it's such a great opportunity as well, because coming in, I was always focused more on like this new innovation side of things, so that left a lot of blind spots in like understanding electricity markets or understanding other parts of the clean energy industry. But it's just this amazing group of people that you can throw any question into the group chats, and you'll have people from experts in the utility industry, experts from on the policy side, people who have their own startups that are willing to share their expertise and advice with you. And it's really great seeing that kind of community in the climate space. And I think that's something we really see. It's not an industry where people are trying to necessarily one up one another. Everyone's trying to raise all tides because we're all going after the same end game of being able to bring all these climate solutions to market. And it really gives hope, when sometimes looking at the macroeconomics of things might seem a little bleak. Being able to talk with all of these people, and seeing that there's so much work behind being able to drive this forward and really putting effort behind this clean energy transition, that is just really inspiring and really gives you hope that there are people out there that are going to make this happen no matter what.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And we have from Tesfayeses, please forgive me if I did not pronounce your name correctly, who I think has a really interesting follow-up to that as well, Troy, as we're talking about training and leadership. But the question is, what would be your suggestion to innovators and young entrepreneurs who are coming from developing countries with limited infrastructure, kind of thin actors, very few investors, weak support systems? Obviously, LabStart is such a unique program and opportunity, but I think for those who may not have infrastructure like LabStart, what is your advice in terms of those who want to get into this space, but the barriers could be kind of high?
Yeah, definitely. I think being able to join, like go to like webinars like this one, and being able to go to, there's a lot of content now online that's really pushing forward about thinking, how do you think about entrepreneurship? What are those um, interesting new opportunities that are out there? And I think coming out of this COVID world, I think we become a lot more globalized, where you can be reaching out to folks in other countries that might have some more of that support system or might have expertise. It's really
Yeah,
easy to go on like LinkedIn and find these folks and just spend the time to talk with other people, hear about their journeys. And especially in this climate space, I think so many people are willing to share their time and spend their time with you to either provide you with their expertise, point you to the right resources out there. And I think the biggest thing is just don't be afraid to ask for support from all these different people. Um, Use LinkedIn, use like the Impact Alpha Network, um, use myself, reach out to me, and I'm happy to point you to different organizations or support systems that might be able to help out. I think there's things like Work on Climate, which is a very large Slack community that has tens of thousands of people in it. So many of them are willing to volunteer their time, willing to share their expertise. So being able to find resources like that, I think, are really important to be growing your network beyond just the community you have in front of you, but community that's available to you globally.
absolutely. That was an excellent response, Troy. Thank you so much. I think and a reminder for all of us, no matter where we're located, to continue to foster in this ecosystem, and as well as I think the advice and feedback. Thank you for the hearts there. The feedback as well, for investors and those looking to get deeper into the deep tech space. Troy, before we close out, we would love to know, where can people connect with you? What's the best way to get connected with LabStart as a whole? If the folks here in this room and investors in this room want to learn more about the entrepreneurs and startups that you're working with.
Yeah, definitely. If you're interested in learning more about the program, you can definitely visit our website at labstart.co. I'll type it in the chat here for
Amazing.
folks as well. Um, we have we hold different webinars and like showcases when we have our cohorts graduating. Um, as well as, if you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to me directly. My email is troy@labstart.co. Um, I'm happy to share more about LabStart and everything that we're working on here as well. And also, we host events during like SF Climate Week, New York Climate Week. So if you're in any of the areas, then we'll be posting all those events on our LinkedIn, where you can come meet some of our fellows in person, learn more about what they're building, and hear more about LabStart. And if you're interested in being a climate entrepreneur yourself, we run our program on an annual cycle. So we're currently in the middle of a cohort right now, but um, sign up on our website to get on our distribution list, and we'll let you know late next year, when we're around summer to fall of next year, when we'll be opening applications again for the next cohort of
Amazing.
LabStart.
Amazing. Troy, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you just for all of your insights, for the work that you're doing in this space. And thank you just for being part of the Impact Alpha community. It's been amazing to have you. Please, again, folks, labstart.co. Troy has also dropped his email right there in the chat. And thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Again, if you either had to jump off earlier, you joined us late, we will have a recap for you to be able to go back and get all of the incredible insights that Troy shared with us today. Thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sherrell. And thank you everyone for joining today.
Thank you. And thank you, Isaac, for hooking us up today.
Yes, thanks, Isaac.